Thank you all for having me up here today. We're going to talk specifically about a new thing that we're doing this year at Esri, and it's called Insights for ArcGIS. And I'd like to start out by emphasizing the importance of data. As we all know, data is very important. But I also want to follow that up with saying that it's not as important as the answers it provides or the stories that it tells. That's an important phrase and one of the premises behind why we're doing Insights, or how it actually came about. When you first start an analytics project or a study, the first thing you do is understand your data. If you don't understand your data, there's not much you can do with it. So you begin to explore and ask it questions. And one question can lead to yet another question. And those are the types of things that we need to enable, and enable it simply. As part of all of this understanding, we want to make sure that GIS we want to make GIS as powerful a tool as you can imagine. And with that, ArcGIS is enabling GIS as a powerful piece of information. Insights for ArcGIS is a new paradigm, a new way of thinking about interactive spatial analysis. It's a new app and new experience that we're adding to ArcGIS. It allows us to bring in data, and data from almost any source, and begin to work with it directly. But probably the better way of understanding what Insights is to actually give you a little taste of it. So let's actually see it. And if we can switch to the podium. Now, I'm in a little dilemma because Monday's plenary is actually showcasing this as part of Jack's session. So I don't want to give away too much of what we're doing there, but I do want to get into it just a little bit and give you a little taste. So with that, Insights itself is a web application, and a web application that introduces a concept known as workbooks. So I'm going to start out by opening an existing workbook that is basically an empty scratch space. And the first thing, maybe we need to switch it over. You see it? Okay, let me back up again. Take us right back out to the opening. There it is. So these are the workbooks that I currently have. I can start a new workbook, or I can open up an existing workbook. And when I open up an existing workbook and it has no information, you can actually see that it brings up an add data dialog. And this add data dialog allows me to add data from not only ArcGIS, but other data sources like Excel and SQL databases that are both tabular and spatial in nature. Other types of data sources will be expanded into here as well. So I'm going to open up and add just a couple of data sets here. And the first thing that it does when it adds these data sets to the workbook, it creates these things called cards. And cards are a visual representation of that data. Some might call them visualizations, but we'll get into that in just a minute. And working with these data sets is pretty straightforward. It brings them into the table of contents. You can see them listed out on the left side here. If I expand them out, though, it's something a little bit different happening. We're adding a form of dimensional modeling to these layers that are added to the table of contents, in that we identify the different roles each field can play. We have a type of role known as location, or a geodimension, if you will. Categorical information like store names, region, and also numeric information or measures like revenue and quantity sold. So if I really wanted to understand for every region the type of revenue that's being accommodated within that region, I simply drag and drop it. And because it's both a numeric and a categorical information, I can easily see this information in a bar chart. And of course, because this data is linked, I can select each bar and see the information represented on the map. So that link is automatically created for you. The visualizations, or better yet, better way of saying it is the result of your analytic operation is best represented given a specific type of result or visualization. But just because it's in a given visualization doesn't mean that I can't change that visualization. In this case, I want to see it as a bubble map. And of course, these cards are not static. I can resize them. And of course, they too are completely interactive. Or if I really want to see it as a tree map, I can see it as a tree map. Any of these types of visualizations are interactive, and what Insights does is understand, based on the data and what you're trying to do, the potential that it brings to the table. Now, what I also want to do here is simply drag my locations and create just a map of my locations. And I want to grab my Southern California territories and create just a map of that. And yes, how's about some standard geographies? Let's bring in the counties of the US and sync all my maps to specifically that area. Now what you're seeing here is a large amount of information being rendered on the map, on all these different maps. I am most interested in San Diego County right now, since we're in San Diego. And let me go ahead and only select the stores that are specifically in San Diego. So sure enough, it did that selection, and I didn't really have to look at any menus or try to find any tools. I simply said, this is the feature I want, show me it. And I dropped it in. So that was pretty simple, pretty interesting. Now from this, I actually want to aggregate all of my store sales into my Southern California territories. Simple way of doing that as well. Take my stores, the filtered stores, and drop it into this result. So one question leads to a set of results. A result can lead to many more questions, leading me down the path of interactivity with my spatial analysis. So as you can see here, all I did was drag from one card to another. I can easily drag a field from my table of contents as well. And it gives me an additional drop zone here. Because it knows I have polygons here, it says you're dragging points over. Maybe you want to do spatial aggregation. Sure enough, it gives me that drop zone. I simply drop it. I can add additional operations like defining additional stats based on information. But in this case, I'll simply run it. And of course, it's going to take that information and render it based on the information that's in San Diego County. And it just gave me that information. Each one of these cards, if I flip it over, will give me summary statistics as to what is happening within that set. So I don't have to go searching for any information. It's just right there for me. I can take this a step further. Let me ask a simple question. How many people here still use Excel? I know, it's a loaded question. But what I'm going to do here is create a new page. And in this new page, I'm going to take and browse for an Excel file. In this case, who's familiar with Oktoberfest? Okay, yeah, that's another loaded question. I'm going to go ahead and load this one in too. And I also want to load up my Southern California sales territories. In this case, I'm going to take everything off of that feature layer and just bring in the SoCal territories. So Insights knows how to work with both spatial and non-spatial data simultaneously. It just knows how to work with data, but with a spatial emphasis. A good example here is my Oktoberfest sales. If you look at the table of contents, there's no geo associated with that sales. However, I can continue to work with it. So I want to see the quantity sold of all the beer subtypes. So I drag that over. It doesn't give me an option for a map because there's no location yet. But I can actually create a chart. And it creates a chart. Now, I can also take that chart and change that. Whoops, I want a summary table. So for every beer subtype, it'll dynamically calculate out a summary total for me without even thinking about it. And if I really wanted to, I can change that to the cost of goods, drop that in, and add cost of goods in addition to quantity sold. And I can keep going like this until I actually get to a place where I need to be. But I also want to take these Oktoberfest sales and locate them based on my sales territory. So yes, I can easily just select that layer within my table of contents. I say add location. And I want to change it to my geographies, select my sales territory, and really simply say add. Now, it'll change that layer, add a new location field, and sure enough, I simply drag that in, And of course, I can do my revenue into that by styling it using my revenue. And now I have my sum of revenue by sales territory, and it's all located without me having to think twice. If you notice, every operation was 3 clicks or less. It was mostly drag and drop. But it's not just the drag and drop that's available to me. On each card, I have this thing known as an action button. An action button gives me a list of operations that I can perform against this data. And I know there's a lot of folks that truly don't understand or have realized the power of what GIS brings to the table or which tool to apply at any specific scenario. So what we've actually done is we've created this new tab in the action button known as Find Answers. And we provide a series of questions like how is it distributed or how is it related, etc. If I click on how is it distributed, you'll see a number of options that are relative to that question. In this case, I want to see it as a histogram. And I can see the histogram here, and I can quickly pull out the higher numbers on the map or the lower numbers on the map without doing too much else. Now, I know we're running out of time, Helen, I'm sorry, but I really want to quickly jump over to one last thing. I haven't had time to show the sharing part, but we'll do that another time throughout the week. While I was doing all of this work, Insights was actually recording my work. It was recording the entire workflow for me, from which I can now save it. I can share it with my other fellows in the organization. I can reload it, add different data. So I can look at a temporal data set for 2014. I want to run the same analysis on 2015. Change the data set, apply it. And you can see that every page has a model associated with it. So that's just a quick peek at what we're doing. If we can switch back over to the slides really quick. I don't know if we want to continue on with this or not, but we're almost out of time. Yeah?
Well, I was going to come up and we'll do that. So this, I mean, the audience was sat there either stunned or, or confused, right? Thank you. Thanks. You know, it's hard to be up here demoing these types of things without that feedback. So, you know, it's incredible. You know, we worked together way back since I think we sat on a plane together and talked about one of these products. And to see Insights now and to be able to demonstrate everything that these guys have talked about, right? This notion of human and questions and importance of that. What's next, right? You've got this new product coming out.
Yes, this year.
This year. But what next? What do you think this is going to do for these people in the audience?
I think there's a couple of different things that Insights can do. One, allow you to easily work with GIS and get to the place where you need to go quickly, but also enable you to take advantage of the entire ArcGIS ecosystem. This itself is a part of ArcGIS. It is not something separate, standalone. It's a part of the ecosystem. So what we've found is a lot of people start their analysis by understanding the information. They get to a certain place, and it could be a map plus a chart, and they're done. Other people say, this is a quick way of me understanding my data better, and now I've come to a specific place where I want to expand that result into a more advanced model. And I take that into ArcGIS Pro or desktop in general. So we found that working with customers in the early adopter phase here, this thing can help not just GIS analysts, but also expand beyond the GIS analysts because it's designed to help people understand and begin to understand the power of what GIS brings to the table through ArcGIS.
And there's this notion in commercial, actually all the way as we do this digital transformation about the everyday analyst.
Yes.
But essentially what you said is now we give the results of this to other people that were not engaged in geography, have that understanding. So when we take all this data, all this massive amount of stuff, how are you going to plumb it in, right? This is big data for many people. Well,
honestly, I've never met data that was actually small. So yes, as you know, GIS data itself is large. And it's not just GIS data, but it's also enterprise data. As a matter of fact, a lot of enterprises take disparate data sources, ETL them all into a big data warehouse, and they create these dashboards and reports and queries against them. That's where data engineers create data models from which application builders build dashboards, et cetera, et cetera. With the insights in ArcGIS as a whole, we're trying to enable access to your data regardless of where it lives. So if it's in a geodatabase, great. You already know how to work with that. We've been working with that. But what if it's in a SAP HANA database or a Teradata database? Well, a lot of people want to keep that data where it is and they don't want to move it out. So we're going to enable direct access into Teradata directly through Insights. Expose that through a workbook, save your workbook, expose that to the ArcGIS land, and from there you can go everywhere. So yes, we're going to continue evolving the different types of data that we do support. Out of the box, and later on in the slides I actually get to it, but we're running out of time, so I get that. SQL Server, SAP HANA, Teradata, Oracle, we're going to continue on. That's an extensible pattern, so if we don't support something out of the box, working with Esri, we can extend that out. Obviously, other types of data, big data, real-time data, through our new geoanalytics capabilities, our new real-time capabilities, all exposed through here and all leveraging the same pattern of analysis studies that you saw with just hosted feature layers and Excel workbooks, both tabular and spatial.
All right. Well, thank you. I mean, amazing product. You've been a